One of the things that I've always wanted in my life is to feel seen and heard in the way that I want to feel seen and heard. Not to be ignored, not to be pushed aside, but to be able to take up space in a way that feels appropriate. What I've learned is that my artwork is a great place for me to do that. Instead, I can feel secure and safe in myself and then speak what I need to speak through my artwork. And it usually takes up more space than I ever could verbally or physically. And so in my show right now, Wait, What Are You? Really stems from being a mixed race person. I get asked that all the time. All of the time. I hate that question. And I think it also is like a little bit of a lantern for other mixed race folk. Hi, my name is Nikki Jabbora Barber. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm an artist in the Northwest. I mainly focus on printmaking. I've been making art my entire life, so a lot of these images and things that came together for the show I've just had in my arsenal because I've been making them forever, specifically the flowers. But during the first part of the COVID lockdown in Seattle, I was struggling with depression, decided to start doing self-portraitures, and just as a way to kind of reflect back on myself and think about me in a kinder light. And it was 2020, and so a lot of folks were talking about race for the first time in my friend circles. I was hearing people, really start to delve in and explore who they were and how they see themselves. And so I also wanted to contribute a little bit of my own dialogue within my artwork and just who I am in general, being a queer person. My favorite thing in the world is when my partner grows me flowers and gives me a bouquet. I just love that. I want anyone to walk into the space and identify that as a flower. If they don't know what kind, fine. That is a flower. Why is it here? And just start that process of asking themselves, what? That's strange. Or maybe, oh, that's pretty. Having a reaction to something small that's attainable. There's so many different avenues that it can go and still find connection. And that was important to me. A dandelion is a dandelion everywhere. And I feel like a dandelion a lot of times. I will make it work with whatever. I'll continually be resilient. I wanted to combine all these different symbols into larger pieces and relate them to me in a more intimate way. Most of my work is about stories and storytelling, and I think of our genetics as a story. For me, being Middle Eastern, but also white, and also all the other things I am, Shahrazad came up a lot. So 1001 Arabian Nights, Aladdin comes from it, Sinbad, if you're also familiar. And those stories are fun and great, and I love them as a kid. I watched the Disney movie. It is also the origins of the word exotic for me, and understanding that, I wasn't just watching these shows or listening to these stories and, just hearing a story. I was also being put into those stories by other people, I think, which I didn't fully understand as a kid, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around as an adult too. To be exotified, but not being an exotic person. But for my piece, I wanted to think about my skin, think about my heritage. I was not raised in a Middle Eastern culture. I was raised to be white. 9/11 happened when I was in 5th grade. I have very distinct memories of my mom telling me, don't tell anyone we're Lebanese. There's a lot of fear based into that, very understandably, but access to culture was just totally cut off. But with the piece, I wanted to bring in the narrator Shahrazad herself. One is really talking about how scary that must have been to fear death every single night, to be a woman with essentially no power other than the skill set that she has, and relating that back to myself. I can't control how other people see me or interpret me based off of what they see. Part of that piece is she's looking away. She's not looking at the audience, and I felt that was important to highlight. She's doing what she can with the tools she has, but she can't control the gaze. With Medusa, I really wanted to kind of move through my own story, and part of what makes me, some of the things that have happened to me, and rape and sexual assault are part of my history, unfortunately. It's something I live with every day. I do have PTSD from it, amongst other things, and working through this particular piece was really difficult, but important. It took me over 200 hours to carve it. And I felt that labor very intensely the whole time, emotionally, more so than physically. But there's also a little bit of a reclamation of power in that too. The story Medusa, there's so many different versions of it, and the version that really stood out to me the most, especially with the Me Too movement, Medusa was raped by Zeus. Athena punished her, turned her into a gorgon. And so there's this element of isolation that I read from it and I also resonate with. And in the Medusa piece, I don't have the eyes present. What is she not able to see? I did include her eyes, like in different parts of her body, as tattoos, just sort of highlighting my body, our bodies. They remember things, they don't forget. But yeah, I chose to have her be naked because I think for so many people, like, being naked is a form of vulnerability. But like, I don't know, I've never quite felt that, even though I have experienced sexual assault and rape. Like, I don't know, I like my body, I think it's great. Like, I like to think of Persephone, the piece behind me, as being about change, about cycles. I think the only thing that we can guarantee in life is that things will change. And Persephone, she was raped by Hades, taken down to hell, and forced to stay there because she got tricked into eating pomegranate seeds. And so her mom, Demeter, was like, no, I'm gonna work out a deal. You can leave hell for 6 months out of the year. And so she is the goddess of seasons and also the goddess of the underworld. And for me, I felt it was important to acknowledge the death as well as the life within that story. Like for me, I carry death with me all the time. I had a strange job as a kid in the Catholic Church as an altar server. Had to altar serve many strangers' funerals as a little kid. And that was pretty brutal, honestly. I cried every single time. No stranger to death at all. I've been in and around it forever. And also, I'm a gay woman, and coming from a very Catholic family, I didn't hear about like saints or important people who are gay. And so part of this piece too, you'll see, like, I have crown, the way it's set up, it's very like Catholic, like a lot of Catholic symbolism. Kind of just honor that I'm a gay person. Like, I know that I probably did have gay ancestors, even though they are never talked about. Like, I'm sure they exist, and like I am going to be a gay ancestor. And so trying to elevate myself a little bit and those that I love and care about into something that is considered good. Barbie is not necessarily my favorite piece, but it was the most fun to make. I see her as my gay femme icon. Like, when I was a kid, I had so many Barbies, and it was my first experience with like understanding gender a little bit and like my own sexual preference. Also, I just like loved all the little pretty things. I thought they were great. I love dress up. Growing up, there was no space for that. Women were looked down upon, they were ignored, they were laughed at, they were shamed constantly. They had some power, but it was usually just over the children rather than like the environment. So I just kind of learned if I start to be more like the Barbie that I want to be, I had more control and authority over how I felt, and it felt much better. And I also, like, once I started to express myself the way it felt more authentic and be more me, and I gravitated towards folks that were also being more authentic and were themselves. And I'm 32 now and still loving and living life as best I can, but I so love my community that has like evolved since, you know, really claiming myself for me. And Barbie is meant to be a little bit more of a representation of that. And also just full of symbolism too. Like, a lot of gays will recognize a lot of them, but one that I think is a little less obvious is the hyacinth that I put in there is a little bulb with roots, and it's native to Lebanon and Syria. And in the same bouquet, there's also lavender. So, you know, some sapphic love mixed in with my Middle Eastern roots. Lavender is something that a lot of people have connection to, but I don't think the general population necessarily knows the gay symbolism behind it. There's a lot of history of it being used as a symbol for queer women, and so I want to, you know, honor that in my own work too. I think collectively all of these pieces have felt healing to me, and I've always, my whole life, gravitated towards making something, a visual art thing, in order to take this feeling that usually would evolve when I was a kid and I had no words for it or understanding of what was going on. Take this big feeling and put it into something else that was not inside of me or touching me. It was just an object. Woodblock was something I didn't learn about until I was in college, and I loved it because it was a way to cut and remove material that wasn't me. It felt so healing and powerful, and also be able to create imagery from it too, and something that was repetitive. Also the printmaking process itself, it like so soothing to my nervous system. Come to the studio, take the hard feelings, put them into visuals, and then, you know, get into kind of a meditative state with carving, and then a meditative state with printing, and kind of just have that quiet in my brain, which is incredible. After the show was up, after everything was printed, and I had that quiet moment alone, like a week later, I just cried. I cried for like an hour, and it kind of hit me all the different feelings that I'd really worked through for the last at least 4 years now. And I think it helped me feel at least proud of myself for having gone through this very intense journey, frankly, which I never thought I would, but I have.